Hey everybody! Today we're going to continue our discussion of repair orders and how to go about writing them. You might remember from last lesson that a technician doesn't just have to complete a repair, but they actually have to write up exactly what they've done, and that's called a story. That's going to be an important element of every repair order. For the first lesson, we looked at the story through the lens of things like its grammar or its ideas, sort of superficial characteristics. But today we're going to break each story down into 4 components so that we can look at how we can go about writing them by including all the necessary elements for an effective story. So the first thing that we need to do is figure out the purpose in writing the story in the first place. The most important purpose of writing a story is going to be to inform our customer of what happened. Since techs don't often directly communicate with customers, writing a story is an important way that a tech can let a customer know exactly what's happened since they dropped their vehicle off with us. Stories are also used to determine warranty claims. So it's important that our story include all the elements required by an OEM. Once we submit a warranty claim, the manufacturer is going to actually look at the story that was written to determine whether or not they pay out that warranty claim. So it's very important that we have all 4 elements in each of the stories that we write. Also, stories help us track things like time and parts. So they're important tools for recording exactly what's happened and also maybe what we might want to do in the future. Before we try writing stories of our own, it's helpful to look at some real-world examples so we can see how they used the 4 components to make an effective story to communicate with others. So to begin the lesson, take a minute to read this example of a repair order. We'll begin our discussion of the 4 C's by looking at the first C, which is the complaint. The complaint is what a customer relays to a service advisor. So usually you're not going to be part of the direct communication with a customer at this point, but it's important that you understand what the customer was trying to say. Usually the complaint will begin as the first sentence in the story, and it will be copied and pasted straight from what the service advisor gives you. But there is part that you have to write as well. So after you attempt to replicate what the complaint has said, you want to document what happened in a sentence or 2. Let's look at how they did this in our real-world example. In this example, the complaint was the first piece. Customer states vehicle runs hot. Now that's going to be what the customer told the service advisor. But next, we have another sentence. Test drove vehicle, engine coolant temperature reaches 230 degrees Fahrenheit. So here we have confirmation that the tech actually tried to recreate the circumstances of the complaint, and then a record of exactly what happened when they did. Next, we'll take a look at the second C, which is the cause. A cause explains what the complaint could and could not be caused by. So it's often a very complex description that has a lot of pieces and parts to it. Some of the elements of this stage of the repair might include the diagnostic procedures, any test results, and any root causes of the problem that were determined by the tech. Usually, the cause element of the story is going to take more than one sentence. Sometimes it'll take several sentences, just depending on the complexity of the repair and the amount of steps that were taken in the repair process. One thing that's important to note, though, is that there needs to be a direct connection between the complaint and the cause. Otherwise, your cause is probably not going to address what the customer was complaining about. So again, let's look at our real-world example and see how it relates to our first element, the complaint. Just as we predicted in the last slide, the cause element of our real-world example is more than one sentence long. So let's take a look at what the tech wrote, and maybe we can figure out why. Checked vehicle to find vehicle runs hot due to cooling fans not turning on. Checked fan motors to find them working. Checked power on ground to find power supply missing. Checked cooling fan relay to find relay inoperable. So as you can see in this step, we're going through all the diagnostic procedures there are a couple things I want to point out. The first is that our first sentence is going to be our root cause. The vehicle is running hot due to the cooling fans not turning on. So the question is going to become, why aren't those fans turning on? Our next few sentences attempt to answer that. So the first diagnostic element we go through is that the fan motors work correctly. And that's important because knowing what works correctly lets us know what we don't need to repair. The next two sentences, though, do let us know two possible causes for this issue. The first is going to be that when the power and ground were checked, the power supply was missing. But the diagnostic didn't stop there. The tech did a really thorough job and went through the entire diagnostic process. And what's really interesting is that they still checked the relay after they found the power supply missing and determined that that could have been a possible cause as well. So I think that this is a really great and thorough example of the cause element of the 4 C's of a story. Let's take a look at the third element now. The third element is going to be the correction. And this is just super direct, very simple language. So the correction explains exactly what was done to repair the vehicle, to get at the root cause. It uses direct language, and it usually only takes about 1 sentence to do the correction, maybe 2 if it was a more complex repair process. Corrections usually utilize specific and precise part names and descriptions so that they are very precise about exactly what was done to correct the issue. So in this instance, our correction is very short, simple, and straight to the point. Replaced cooling fan relay. So as we can see, this relates to our root cause from earlier and all the diagnostic procedures, and it moves our story along because it lets our customer and also our fellow shop techs know exactly what we did to make the repair happen. Our fourth and final C is going to be confirmation. So the confirmation plays 2 important roles in the story. First, it explains how we know the repair worked. But it's also important because it proves to a customer and to any other tech that comes along and works on the car how and why we know it's been fixed. So let's see what the tech said in the real world example. So for the confirmation element, the tech wrote, test drove vehicle after repair to find engine coolant temperature now reaches a maximum of 205 degrees Fahrenheit. I think this is a really good example of a confirmation sentence for a couple of different reasons. First, the confirmation is given to a customer and to any other tech that the vehicle was test driven after the repair. So that lets us know that the root cause has probably been addressed. But it's not enough to just say that the vehicle has been repaired. We need to also prove it. And what I think is really great about this example is that the tech uses consistent standards from the complaint, where they state that the engine coolant was reaching 230 degrees Fahrenheit, to the confirmation, where they state that after the repair, now it's only hitting 205 degrees Fahrenheit. So I think this is a really great example because it's very thorough, it uses consistent standards, and it gets right to the point of proving exactly how the repair made a difference for the customer's vehicle. So that wraps up our discussion of the 4 C's of a story. To write an effective story for a repair order, we have to include all 4 of these elements. So always make sure as you're doing your own stories to go back and take a look and explicitly check every single time, do I have each element that I need for a complete story? Moving forward, just know that we don't have any assignments until we have class on Monday. And other than that, just anytime that you see your repair order in between now and then, take a look at it and break it down into its elements and think to yourself, what might you do to improve it? Or what do you think were some strengths of the example that you have in front of you? So I will look forward to seeing you all in class on Monday, and you all have a great weekend. Thanks.